Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello, you can call me Evie, and I wanted to tell you my story because it was absolutely terrifying at that time. It all started in the morning of February 14, 2018. I was in middle school and the campus was buzzing with life. And guys were running around with gifts for their girlfriends. Girlfriends gave gifts to their boyfriends, and friends exchanged candies. All in all, everything seemed normal. I wasn't popular per se, but I knew everyone and everyone knew me. But I preferred to hang out with a small group of close friends because being around too much people made me anxious. During lunch, I was hanging around my usual group of friends, which consisted of 2 girls, Alex and Mia, and 3 guys, Nico, Adrian, and Elijah. Valentine's Day of all days made me even more anxious because a lot of people would join our group because my friend Adrian attracted a lot of girls, and my friend Mia was such a sweetheart and a lot of guys wanted to date her. I began to feel overwhelmed, so I slipped out of my group and then headed to a secret hiding place, which was just a bench that was way out in the field, sort of hidden by some trees. No one really went there, so it was a good place to catch my breath. And as I was reading my book, I hear someone getting closer, and I look up to see this guy Emmanuel. When I saw Emmanuel, I instantly started to freak out because he always seemed to have this sort of infatuation with me. Every day, he would force himself on me, randomly hugging me, trying to kiss me, telling me he liked me. And believe it or not, I would often see him around my neighborhood, and he didn't even live near there. I decided to play it cool and then continued reading, when he suddenly just grabs my book out of my hands. "Hey, what the heck, man?" I yelled, and he simply responded with, "Sorry, I just wanted your attention." I was still angry, but I tried to calm myself down. "What do you want?" I said. "I really like you, and I want you to be my girlfriend. I swear, I'll treat you like a queen." After he said that, he handed me a box of chocolates and a cute stuffed bear. I thought it was a nice gesture, but I really felt uncomfortable whenever he was around, so I told him that even though it was sweet of him, I was already in a relationship, which wasn't true. When the words left my mouth, he turned from being nice and calm to angry. He yelled at me saying, "How dare I date someone that wasn't him?" I tried to get up and leave, but he tightly grabbed my arm and forcefully kissed me. I tried pushing him off, but he was stronger than me, so I yelled for help at the top of my lungs, and he quickly covered my mouth. So I bit his hand and I kicked him in the balls. And while he was shocked, I broke free and ran to my friend group. He yelled behind me saying how he would rape me and then kill me. Obviously, the duty guards heard this and immediately took action. But I just wanted to get to the safety of my group, so I kept running until I bumped into Adrian. The rest of my group had separated in order to look for me when they noticed that I was absent. I hugged him and I cried my eyes out. He only comforted me until I was ready to talk. I then told him everything when I was suddenly called into the principal's office. They wanted to know everything that had happened, and then the police were called. It was a long day, and I just wanted to go home. After I told them what had happened, I was allowed to leave for home early. I later found out that in his house, There was a shrine built for me with pictures of me doing various different things, walking my dog, eating in my living room with my family, even of me changing. It was horrible and traumatizing. So Emmanuel, let's never meet again.
This happened to my friend Simone a while back. She got into a relationship with a guy who she adored. He constantly doted on her. He had money and came from a line of it, but that didn't make their relationship any more stable. After the honeymoon period of about 3 months, things start to go off the rails. She couldn't come hang out with the girls anymore. There was always an excuse. She was always busy. We would often go to the movies together, just us two, but even these would be cancelled, and I was her best friend. She started telling me that she didn't want to speak to me that much anymore, that her boyfriend was consuming a lot of her time. Non-stop texts, asking where she was when she was at school. It became really infuriating. She even had to quit her job as a nanny of these 2 adorable children because the guy became concerned that she may just fall in love and sleep with the husband. Really messed up stuff. After a while, I actually went round her house and spoke to her mum about it. I felt like it was the best thing to do. She wasn't in a good place. And after a good chat and staying over for dinner, crying and falling asleep together on her bed, we agree that the best course of action would be to tear off the band-aid and let this guy go. It took her about a month, but she dumped him. She finally saw how manipulative he was being and how it's not normal to try and control your partner's life. But then the stalking began. He started sending her gifts, all of which she refused. Then, following her. She got a new job working at a supermarket. She'd be followed home in her car by her ex. When she got home, he'd usually just drive on, and she began to get really annoyed. She had ceased contact with him about 3 months ago at this point, and she started messaging him again, demanding why he was still following her, that they were broken up, and that he should just get over it. He said that he still loved her, and that he would not relent until they were together again. He didn't stop saying this, and said that he needed to make sure she got home safely. It was his number one concern because he loved her, that she was his soulmate. As you can imagine, this went down really well. So well, in fact, she ended up getting a restraining order, which didn't do much until they tried to get further police involvement. At which point, he finally got the memo that perhaps it's best to let sleeping dogs lie. And that's how the story ended. But it was a very challenging year. Thankfully, Simone is now with a lovely guy.
I'm 19 years old and I'm living far from home in a studio room. I'm often up late, and last week I was just doing some laundry at around 11 p.m. I saw a man sitting in the lobby. I saw him around a bit at night, but I didn't think much of it. I'm in the laundry room and I just put my clothes in the dryer, and I hear the laundry room door beeping, and it meant that someone was coming in. There was the man, standing there with no clothes to wash, just staring at me. I maneuvered around him and headed to the lifts, and he followed me quickly and cornered me and asked for my Snapchat. I was tired, and I just wanted to get back to my room, so I stupidly gave it to him. I figured that he would message and try to flirt, and that I could just say, "I have a boyfriend. Sorry if you thought this was anything else." And that would be the end of it. I'm about 5'4", very long red hair, and I'm half Indian/English with Afghanistan descent, so I'm white passing, but kind of exotic. But people tend to stare at me. Well, anyway, He starts messaging me, and it's kind of normal. But then he starts saying weird stuff like, "I saw you a month ago and I was impressed. I've been visiting a friend and staying here. And also, I've been watching you. I noticed that you come out mostly at night." And he told me that he was Saudi Arabian and only visiting for 5 more days. But then it gets worse. He says, "I love you. I can't help it." And then I say that I have a boyfriend. And then he answers, "I only want you," and continues to completely ignore that. He asked to come to my room and I said no, and that he wanted a hug. He asked me if I was living alone and if I was a virgin, and he kept saying he loved me and that I was perfect for him and that I impressed him. At that point, I recorded all the messages on Snapchat, spoke to him a little bit more to gather evidence so that I could take it to reception in the morning and tell them that he's been watching me for a month. I got my guy friend who lives on the 2nd floor to walk me down to the laundry room, and we sat in the student lounge area, and my friend calmed me down. I was shaking with adrenaline and fear. We saw him around the laundry room again looking for me, but luckily, I'd already picked it up. I run back to my room and my friend says that I can't stay in his room. But I said it's okay and that I'll just lock my door. It's about 1 a.m. and I hear someone outside my room trying to get in. I asked my friend if he's outside my room and he said no, so I just froze. I didn't want to make a sound and I felt sick to my stomach and helpless. Eventually, it stopped and whoever it was went away. And in the morning, I reported this to reception and then went to stay a few days with my boyfriend. Then after went to London to visit a friend. And last night was the first time that I'd spent the night in my room since this happened. I'm very paranoid now. Sadly, I should probably be used to this. It's not the first time that I've been sexually harassed. One guy tried to kiss me in a club by grabbing my head, and a bunch of other things have happened, but I won't go into there. But anyway, I'm terrified to go outside my room after dark now. I'm constantly looking over my shoulder and feeling paranoid. I just keep blaming myself for being too nice, and I know it's my long thick hair that attracts people's eyes to me. I just want to cut it all off. Has anyone else had a similar experience? How did you deal with it? Reception still hasn't updated me on if he is still in the building. To start, I'm a female in my early 20s, and I work as a cashier at a grocery store. I talk to hundreds of people a week, and I should have known something was off when he first came through my line about 6 months ago. But my job is to be friendly to people, so I treated him like every other customer. He was obviously down on his luck, and when I asked the usual question of, "How is it going today?" he proceeded to tell me a whole sob story. His wife, or possibly ex, had apparently kicked him out of the house. In his words, apparently because she was having a psychotic breakdown. Which should have been my first red flag. He was houseless, lonely, and hungry, and I felt bad for him and I attempted to sympathize. He was trying to buy a hot roasted chicken, but our government programs in the state don't cover hot food for some reason. So I did some cashier magic and I changed it so his food stamps would cover the chicken and he'd have a hot meal that night. Well, this was my first mistake, and although he was extremely grateful, this was also apparently a defining moment for him. Every Monday, he proceeded to come through my line and buy a hot chicken. I genuinely thought I was just doing something nice for someone that's going through a hard time. He always ended up trapping me at my register with conversation. and at first it was to complain about his ex's psychotic behavior. He called her names like narcissistic and crazy, and I listened because I had nowhere to go and I was at work after all. But after a while he got over it and he moved into a hostel of some sorts. He was somewhat more stable, but also obviously depressed. He always told me that I cheered him up and he enjoyed talking with me, and I told him that I did as well. Maybe that wasn't the right thing to say, but I really did at that time. He would also occasionally ask what my shift was or when I got off work, but I was too naive at that time to see the harm in the question. Eventually, he was very excited to tell me that he got a hold of a used keyboard and was excited to be playing or writing music again. I told him that was awesome and that I also play the piano. Well, something must have clicked in his brain because now he had something to relate to me about, and every conversation we had from there on was him encouraging me to play the piano again and telling me that I'd be a great music teacher, even though he'd never heard or seen me play. But I just nodded and smiled and did my job, and I really thought that conversation topic was innocent enough. Then one day, he asked for my email. This is where I really messed up. Even though it was a burner email, and I never planned on responding, I gave it to him. He was sending me music he liked and music he wrote, and I never responded to him. I knew it was upsetting him, but at this point, something felt weird, and responding would have been opening another line of communication with him, and I kind of had my fill at work already. At some point, he also asked for my number, but I declined giving it to him. He said that he finally wanted to have a real conversation with me, even after never responding to his emails once. I should mention too that my co-workers always thought that the interactions he had with me were a little too personal and lengthy. Someone even called him a creep one day, but I brushed it off. I was just being friendly to someone who was down on their luck, so I thought. Eventually, everything my co-workers were saying were starting to ring loudly in my head. I found myself avoiding him. He was sending me emails at least once a week and I never replied. I knew he'd come in on Mondays and about what time, so I'd take an extra break then. I just didn't want to see him anymore. I didn't want to talk, and to be frank, he was creeping me out a bit. Last week, one of the busiest weeks at the grocery store. It was the week before Thanksgiving. I couldn't avoid him, and he came through my line. He only bought a bag of chips and very clearly just wanted to talk to me and waited in line for 5 minutes instead of going through the express registers. I gave him short answers and tried not to engage too much, and he told me that I had saved his life and had somehow helped him completely turn it around just by being his cashier at the grocery store. This is something he has said before, but this time he told me that he had wrote a song for me to return the favor. I didn't know how to react, but in that moment, I said I'd let him know what I think. I think I saw it in my email, but I never gave it a listen, and I never even read the email. This interaction made me feel icky. It told me everything that I needed to know. He was thinking of me after he left the store. He was thinking of me while he was home. He was thinking about me while writing music, and the only thoughts I were having about him were on Mondays, because I knew he'd be coming in. My thoughts about him were filled with dread and anxiety, and today was absolutely my breaking point. I got back from my last break and I just saw him getting off the bus. At this point, my co-workers know that I try to avoid him, so I ran up the stairs to the break room and I was obviously panicking. 15 minutes later, one of my coworkers come in and lets me know that he did 3 laps around the store just looking for me and then left without buying anything. He was clearly seeking me out. I told her that I was gonna wait 10 more minutes and I would be back on the floor. So I did. But when I got back to the floor, I was just filled with anxiety and clearly looking around for him. Thank God my coworkers had my back because I didn't notice him coming in again. But he suddenly beelined to my register and I started having a panic attack. One of the other cashiers was very inviting to him. She said, "I can help you right over here." Because at this point, I was running away from the registers and the other cashier had stepped into where I was at. He ignored her and followed me. And I didn't say anything. I was also clearly panicking and running away, and he followed me to the steps yelling, "Wait! I'm sorry. I'm sorry." I had just made it to the break room and the store manager opened the door. I just had a conversation with him about this guy, and he told me that he would handle it the next time he was in, and he will tell him that he needs to leave me alone. I didn't realize it would be in the same day. I blurted out, "He's back. He's following me." Management ran down the stairs to try to catch him. He was gone. He still didn't buy anything because he only does this if I'm the cashier. I had a full-blown panic attack in the break room and I was crying and I called my boyfriend to come pick me up because I didn't want to be alone. His apologies rang in my ears and one of my coworkers pointed out, he wouldn't be apologizing if he knew he wasn't doing something wrong. That really stung. She was 100% right. My coworkers comforted me, and they told me that it wasn't my fault and that I don't need to be sorry. I just can't help but feel so sorry. Sorry I didn't have the guts to set boundaries with him sooner or tell him how uncomfortable he was making me. The store manager said that his behavior was completely inappropriate. Coming once a week when he knew that I was working and only buying something if I was his cashier. He said that that was stalker behavior. Everyone did. I ended up going home early and calling out for the next day because I am genuinely scared of seeing him again this week. I am still in shock and complete disbelief, but old man, let's not meet again, especially not next Monday.
I work night shift at Walmart. My shifts are always from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m., except in the first few months of the year when they're cutting back on hours, and I sometimes start at 11 p.m. and leave at 6 a.m. Late last year, around September, when the weather was still nice outside, I went into Walmart during the day to buy some groceries. I had a few things in my basket and was walking out from the back of the store towards the self-checkout area. I noticed, out of my peripherals, that a man, probably in his mid-20s, a little taller than me and wearing a baseball cap, was approaching me from the other side of the features, those promo displays that sit in the middle of the big aisles. When he was done, he started talking to me like we were acquaintances. "I see people I know here all the time when I'm here." "Oh?" I asked, assuming he'd seen me in the morning while I was working. "Yeah, it's weird how every time I come here I see the same people all the time." He kept rephrasing himself, and I didn't really know what to say. It was pretty awkward. He kept making small talk, as I didn't stop walking to the self-checkout, and was kind of just going along with the conversation like you do when some random person is talking about the weather. Now that I look back on it, when he told me he sees the same people all the time, I thought he looked a little familiar and assumed he was a vendor and worked some mornings there, and I mistakenly mentioned I worked there and also see the same faces. Then he told me to have a nice day and I checked out and went to my car, dismissing the interaction. A lot of fellow employees greet me at Walmart when I go there during the day. so I didn't think much of it. Then, it got super weird super fast. I was just leaving the parking lot, and the exiting road splits into a left-only lane and the other a straightaway. I was turning, stopped, when this white Ford Explorer pulls up next to me and beeps loudly. I was already turning, but looked in my rear view and sure enough it was the guy from earlier. I recognized his face and baseball cap. He sat at this stop, watching me pull away. Alright, a little weird, but he's probably just being friendly. When I got home, I told my boyfriend, and he immediately thought it was strange, and then said I was wrong for even engaging in conversation with this man, because sometimes some guys can get the wrong idea. My boyfriend also works with me on my shift, but his car has a blown head, so we've just been using my car to commute back and forth from work. So on nights I don't work, my car is still there if he works. Keep in mind that as employees, we aren't allowed to park close to the store. We are limiting the parking at the far end of the lot or in front of the other stores in the shopping center. I have a typical spot. I always park in front of the AT&T place, which is next to the gym, which is next to Walmart. About 2 months ago, my boyfriend said he went to walk out the car on break and saw a white Ford Explorer parked next to it, with a guy sitting within it. When he saw my boyfriend, he left. This happened again in the same month, except my boyfriend was sitting in the car, and the white Ford Explorer drove up to Walmart, then past my boyfriend staring at him. Then last month, I was driving home from work. It was barely 7 a.m., still pretty dark outside, and I was cruising down the highway towards the exit for my town. There was a car following 2 lengths behind me. We were both doing the speed limit, nothing abnormal, and suddenly this car begins to speed up. Gets in the fast lane as if to pass me, but slows down so that we are neck and neck. The driver turns on his interior lights, waves at me and then speeds off. It was the guy in the white Ford Explorer. I just stared at him bewildered. I didn't know what to think. Then it dawned on me. He knows where I work. He knows what my car looks like. It's pretty distinguishable even from the back. I have shark fins along the top, decals, mud flaps, etc. He probably was waiting for me to leave work and then followed my car when I left. Thank God he didn't follow me home because I never would have realized it. I was totally unsuspecting when I walked out to my car alone. Now, what happened a few days ago is why I'm even sharing this. I think this is when it started to escalate. It was a typical night. Both my boyfriend and I worked along with our co-workers and friend called Mark. When Mark works, we always park next to him, so we can talk on lunch and breaks with the windows rolled down. Mark parks further away from the store, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. We finish up for the night, clock out, and Mark heads out to his car while my boyfriend and I buy some stuff to make for dinner. We check out and head to the car. Mark is still there, which is unusual for him since he books it out of there like a bat out of hell every time his shift is up. "Hey man, did you get my text?" he calls out, smoking a cigarette. "No, let me check my phone." My boyfriend pulls out his phone and I see a pretty long unread text from Mark. Pretty much, this weird guy came out of nowhere and was touching and looking at the inside of your girlfriend's car, Mark says. My immediate thought was, some randomer likes my car enough to come up and touch it. Weird, but okay. Like he just walked up and started touching the fins and looking inside. Then when he saw me sitting there, he asked me about the decorations. I told him I didn't know anything about them, and he told me to have a nice day. We immediately started checking for damages, slashed tires, etc., but there was nothing. We get in the car, and the 3 of us just sit there, contemplating the reasoning behind this. The Ford Explorer guy had almost slipped my mind. His encounters were a month or so apart, but then I started thinking about him again. There were 2 cars parked near us, a white 2010 Pontiac G6, and surely enough, a white Ford Explorer. Up until this point, I didn't know the make of the car he drove, but I knew it was definitely a white SUV. Mark said he came from the direction of those two cars, so unless he walked to Walmart at 7 a.m., one of those cars was his. The Explorer was facing the opposite direction, and I quickly wrote down the number plate. I started asking Mark what the guy looked like. About your boyfriend's height, kind of a gangster-looking guy. Keep in mind I've only seen this guy once when he wasn't in this car, which was 4 months prior. The height sounded right, but I didn't really know. We decided to sit there and wait until this guy came out and confront him. Just as we were about to give up and leave, the guy starts walking our way out of Walmart. He was wearing a black hoodie, dark jeans, and a camo bandana. When he saw us, he put on sunglasses. Both of us looked towards Mark. Is that the guy? No, that's not him. Mark shook his head. The guy walks into the Explorer, sits in the driver's seat and lights a cigarette with the door open. After he closed it, I looked back at Mark. Are you sure that's not him? Yeah, it's him. That's the guy, Mark nodded. Explorer guy starts his car and looped around our car, staring at us, then looped again to the exit of the parking lot. Mark said he didn't want to tell us it was the guy because he didn't want my boyfriend to lose his job. I'm pretty sure Mark would have told us if it was the guy, then some stuff would have gone down. I'm pretty positive now that this guy has been stalking me. For how long, I don't know. I'm starting to think the guy drove to Walmart. I want to assume to buy something since he walked out with nothing. Saw my car parked next to it, then realized while he was casing my car that Mark was sitting there. So he asks Mark about the shark fins to try and make him think he was just interested in how it looked and not being completely shady. I'm creeped the hell out, but I have his plate number. The morning before we left work, my boyfriend bought me pepper spray, and I'm now parking elsewhere, and I'm going to start asking co-workers if they'll take me to my car in the mornings when I'm alone. I don't know what I can do, or if anyone would take this seriously because he hasn't tried anything yet. Sadly, I'm a pretty dainty girl, too brave for my own good, and I couldn't fight my way out of a wet paper bag. But I don't think this is over yet. Last night I was stocking yogurt alone at around midnight, when I hear, "Excuse me," from behind me. Thinking it was a typical customer question, I turn around while politely replying, "Yes?" When I fully turned, it took me a moment to realize who was approaching me. Stalker. I know that my facial expression probably spoke volumes about my fear for a little while, but I didn't want to alarm or upset him, so I kept calm and spoke to him like I would any other customer. "I'm not a stalker or anything," he prefaced, "but I was just wondering where you got those decorations for your car. I see it a lot and I'm curious." "I got them off eBay." Before I could finish, he interrupted me, trying to keep the conversation going. "Do you know what they're called?" "Pretty sure they're called diffusers, because they're meant to diffuse airflow on the car. I got them off eBay for $20 the whole set." "Oh, okay, thanks. Have a nice night." He smiled and walked away. What the hell? I'm not a stalker or anything. Yeah, dude, you are. I think I was in shock because there was no way I should have been that calm and nonchalant while talking to him. I know for a fact he was just trying to cover his ass since we pretty much caught him red-handed that day. I really hope I never see him again because he knows we're on to him.
And here are the top comments for my last video. And here's the riddle for this video.